Good morning, everyone. This is the time and the place of the April 9th meeting of the Boise Public Library Board of Trustees. I will now call this meeting to order. Can we please have a roll call?
Benny?
Here.
Pantera?
Here.
Zaneski?
Here.
Lemons? Here. 4 board members present, Kamal absent.
Thank you. Jessica, do you have an introduction this morning?
I do. New to the board, making her debut is Alicia McAndrews, who is behind the pillar for some of you. She is our new senior manager in the budget division. So she is new to the city, and we are very excited to have her on board.
Thank you and welcome, Alicia. No communications this month, so we will move into the minutes approval. So you have in your packets the minutes from the March 12th meeting. I will accept a motion to approve if there are no additions or changes.
I reviewed the minutes and feel they accurately reflect the proceedings of the last board meeting, and I move we approve them as written. Second.
Roll call?
Benny?
Yes.
Pantera?
Yes.
Zaneski?
Yes.
Lemons?
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Moving on to the consent agenda. All matters on the consent agenda are considered routine and may be approved in a single motion. A trustee may ask that an item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately.
Just wanted to mention one thing. We had another significant gift on the gift received list, and I always get sort of excited about that.
Thank you, Brian. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda, or would you like to discuss the gift?
So moved.
Second.
A roll call, Carrie.
Benny?
Yes.
Pantera?
Yes.
Zaneski?
Yes.
Lemons?
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Moving on to the report section. It doesn't look like we have a representative from the Friends online this morning. So we will move on to the foundation. Camille Franks, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Our update this month is that we continue to receive donations, and we are working on the different projects that are taking place throughout 2025 to continue our ongoing support of the library. Our next meeting is tomorrow. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Camille. We appreciate you. Okay, moving on to the director's report with Jessica.
Thank you. Good morning. Just a couple of things to call to your attention. I'll give you a little bit of background on the gift that Brian pointed out. That is our annual disbursement from the Mary Claire Ellison Fund. This was a fund that was set up, goes to the foundation, and then we are able to use usually about $30,000 a year for our print materials. And this year, our acquisitions and technical services team is putting together some early literacy kits that we're really excited about. And we'll make sure that they have a chance to bring those into you so you can see them, because they are kits that are designed to help parents and caregivers in 3 different age ranges on 0 to 5 learn the basic concepts of early reading. A couple other things to note. On April 2nd, we put out the call for the open board of trustees position. So a press release came from the city and from the library. That opening will be available for 3 weeks. So it will be closing on Tuesday, April 23rd. You must be a resident of the city of Boise. So you must live within Boise city limits to apply as a trustee. You must be able to attend monthly meetings. And you must obviously be passionate about library and service to the community. We are on a timeline with that closure at the end of this month to have the new trustee appointed by the mayor and confirmed by council in June. So in that July meeting, when you have resigned from the board, we will be back to we are on track to have 5 full members again. We know how challenging it is to have a quorum with 5 trustees, so that is why we put that in place. And if you're interested in serving on the library board, obviously all of you are interested in serving, it's not the first thing. There is information on the library's website and on the city's website. I also want to call attention through this month in April, we've got two exciting things going on. One, it's our Community Helpers Month. So a lot of our programming is partnered with organizations such as the Forest Service, Summer Public Services, and the Post Office. If you've ever wanted a behind the scenes look at how the city is run and some of our really important community helpers, police, fire, you can attend a story time with our youth services team and tour a post truck. The postal service truck has been the highlight the last couple of years. We're also seeing our first set of residencies from our new writer in residence. This is Alan Heathcott. And he will be doing a series of workshops on the 5 tenets of literary potency. His first workshop on empathy will be Saturday, April 19th at 10:30 in this room. So his residency is starting this month, and we're really welcome to have him. And then finally, I just want to celebrate a milestone that we achieved this week. As you remember, in the FY25 budget request, we requested 4.5 FTEs to be added to our Coleman Ustick location in order to better serve the community. And as of this week, we are fully staffed at Coleman Ustick. So cheers for all the great work that Renee and Anne and her team did on finding and filling those positions. This means more outreach, more engagement with the community. We'll have more programs next month. The whole system, but Coleman Ustick will be launching and sort of the support structure, 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten program. And so we're just really excited what this investment means and the impact it will have for the community. And with that, if there's any questions, I'm happy to try to answer.
Can we also share, so I was trying to pull up the details of it because it will happen before our next meeting. Can we share a bit about the library's feature in the City Club?
Oh, that's
forum
right.
coming up that-
And this was something, now with additional capacity at Coleman Ustick, we will be having Renee Addington, who is the branch manager. She will be presenting at the upcoming City Club Forum, which I think is the 23rd.
23rd from 4:30 to 6:30 at Jump.
And she'll be talking about library services and services.
April 23rd from 4:30 to 6:30 at Jump. This is a special City Club forum. It's the Marilyn Schuler Human Rights Forum, and it's actually being designed by students. So they were the ones who reached out to request a member of the library to be able to speak to it as a third place for young people to go. Be exciting. Any other questions for Jessica? Thank you. Moving on, this month, we have no requests for consideration. Moving on to new business, we will review our financial forecast with Eric Villamaria, the Boise City Department of Finance Administration Director, and Alicia McAndrews, the City Department of Finance and Administration Budget Division Senior Manager. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Morning, I'm happy to be here. I'm going to take the presentation. Alicia's here. Going forward, she'll be giving these presentations. I'm going to do this last one. Okay. So I know we have a short amount of time. There's a lot of content, but I'm going to try and go through it pretty quickly here. I come before the board each year, do kind of a overall update as to where we are with the budget. I understand there may have been discussions, around how the library is doing with their budget overall. So I'm just going to speak more globally to some themes that we're experiencing as a city. So first thing, just, I show this each year. When we develop the budget, we're not necessarily going line item by line item across the entire organization. There are many items that are ongoing and basic, are ongoing, namely personnel, right? So as a percentage of the overall budget, a pretty small amount is adjusted on an annual basis. We do take an incremental approach. The overall goal of the budget process is to align revenues and expenses. Alicia and I gave a presentation to the City Council last month where we previewed that we're looking at decreased flexibility in fiscal year 26 as a result of rising costs. You can kind of see this graphically. We've had expenditure growth, which is outpacing our revenue growth. Some of the contributing factors to our expenditure growth are strategic investments, our PERSI costs, which is the retirement system for City of Boise employees. Those costs have gone up, as have our software, insurance costs. Our contributions to the capital fund have gone up. We've just seen cost escalation for things such as facilities and maintenance and equipment, and then compensation, and then revenue growth. We're projecting increases, albeit not as high of a rate as we are on the expenses. When you look at our overall revenues, the vast majority of our revenues are made up from property taxes. We aggregate our revenues into three categories: those that are available for general purposes, and that would include property tax, our sales tax receipts, liquor tax, and then franchise fees. Approximately a quarter of our revenues within the general fund are reimbursement based. That would be departmental revenue. So you can think about things like our parks programming, reimbursement for services for police and fire services, our development fees, all of our permitting and inspection revenue, and then internal charges, reimbursements for services. That's all a reimbursement base, so it's not necessarily available for general use. And then we have a very small percentage that's just generally not counted upon for budget balancing. Carry forward and fund balance is one-time in nature, so we don't use that to support ongoing costs. Fines and forfeitures, ticket revenue, used to be library fines when we used to collect overdue fees, would go into that bucket, as well as any other revenues. When we look at the expenditures within the general fund, most of the costs are ongoing and subject to cost escalation. You can see 71% of the general fund's budget is dedicated towards personnel. A significant portion of the cost escalation is really beyond the city's control. You can think about things like, and I previously mentioned this, contributions towards the PERSI system. There are fixed rates associated with that are handed down to the city from the state on an annual basis. Those contribution rates are going up pretty significantly. You can also think about things like rental costs. So where we rent facilities like the Overland Ranch, right? You don't have any control over what the costs are for that. Fuel prices, although fuel prices right now are coming down, in general, if you look historically, they've gone up by quite a bit. And then equipment costs. So we have a number of costs within the overall city budget that are just growing with minimal control mechanisms. And synthesize kind of where we are with the general fund budget, system highlights. We have these themes of higher growth rate for expenses than we do for revenues. And we certainly are in a reduced flexibility position. We're also better positioned than many other cities across the country. We don't expect to be in a deficit position going into fiscal year 2026. There's been careful budgeting decisions by the mayor and by the council in prior years that positions us well. And I think we can work our way through this. The forecast is still being refined. So I know I didn't present any hard numbers there, but we're working it every day to ensure that the final budget package is as accurate as possible. Hitting again on some of the factors from the reduced flexibility. we have made some proactive investments in the community. We've seen legislation that's impacted our revenues. Folks may recall a property tax bill that was approved a few years ago that limits our ability to collect property taxes when new development occurs. And then, as a theme, expenditure growth outpacing our revenues. We expect that personnel cost growth is expected to outpace property tax revenue in the future. That's a pretty big deal because those are our two biggest categories, one in revenue and one in expense. The personnel growth largely attributable to PERSI. We're in the process of developing options to increase budget flexibility as well as go into the overall fiscal year 26 budget. We aim to further position the general fund in the city for success with some strategic budgeting decisions. The actual recommendations that are going to be included in the fiscal year 26 budget will be previewed for the city council in May at our budget workshop. That's in advance of the June release of our comprehensive budget document. From a timeline perspective, we presented our overall condition, much more kind of expansive discussion with the city council last month. We'll be doing that workshop May 20th, releasing the budget book mid-June, having another pretty exhaustive workshop on June 24th. We encourage the public to attend that, to listen in. We also encourage the public to attend our public hearing, which is scheduled for July 15th, and provide their perspective on the budget. Ultimately approving the council ultimately approving the budget on August 26th. I'll note that this week our budget feedback website will go live. It will be an opportunity for the public to weigh in on priorities and thoughts that can be considered as we do develop the fiscal year 26 budget. That feedback will be shared with the city council throughout the process. So it's very high level, but I'm happy to answer any questions that folks might have.
So a couple of different questions. In prior years, federal funds, especially ARPA funds, contributed quite a bit to the city's activities, and I wondered I didn't see that as a particularly large factor. Is there a lot of funds, and then what's the prospect with changes in federal law administration? So that's
That's a
Just start
really,
Eric out with a softball.
sorry. It's on everybody's mind.
absolutely, yeah. It's pretty difficult to predict what the federal government is going to do presently. Going back to that slide, that other revenue category at the bottom is where the federal funds would primarily fit in. They are pretty variable on a year-to-year basis, so we typically don't account for federal funds within the general fund for ongoing expenses. So they're project-based, one-time in nature. Right now it's not a huge part of our fiscal year 26 budget balancing plan. We don't have a lot of ongoing federal revenues that are projected to be received. We're monitoring it on a day-to-day basis. It's ever changing.
And then the second question has to do with PERSI. PERSI has two parts. There's the employer contributions, and then there's the employee contributions. And our employees also going to see an increase in contributions in addition to the employer or the city in this case.
Yeah, employee contributions over the next couple of years are also projected to increase.
And then finally, a question about reserves. So if you put in budget, what you have, how is that kind of used to dealing with the state, in which there's all these rainy day accounts floating around. So such a thing at the state level, like there must be some level.
There is. So we have what we call the cash flow reserve fund. And we have a goal of having 8% of operations within that account. presently do. We have not had to dip into that account in recent years. But
That was gonna be the follow-up question, was whether or not you're using those funds as you're projecting budgeting for the fiscal year coming up.
the goal is always to balance ongoing revenues with ongoing expenses, not have to dip into those for base operations.
Thank you very much.
The same question as Rob's.
All right. Thank you so much, Eric. We appreciate you.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on to the next section, is the fiscal year 25 Ada Community Library Annexation Compensation Agreement.
I will be presenting this. Since 1994, the Boise Public Library has reimbursed the Ada Community Library due to past city annexation of the previously unincorporated county land, which was how that library was funded. And by agreement, this annual payment amount has been set at $544,000. So this really facilitates provision of library services by Ada Community Library of the Boiseans who live near and use that library.
Questions about the annual amount? Okay. With that, we do need a motion to approve this year's agreement for payment.
I move that we approve the fiscal year 25 annexation compensation agreement between Ada Community Library and Boise.
A second.
Roll call, please.
Lenny,
Yes.
Rivera. Yes. Janeski,
Yes.
Lemons,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carried.
Moving on to old business, we will start with a policy review. We've got two sections to look at today. So we will start with section 3.04 around interlibrary loans. So Jessica and then Kathy Stadler is going to join us.
Yeah, thank you. We are bringing back section 3.04 out of order because a change necessitates us bringing it back to you. Sarah Kelly Chase will take the next section, which is the continued routine review of section 4. It's a big one. You guys are pretty chunked it up for you. But I'm bringing back to you the section 3.04 interlibrary loan. And the reason that we are making a change to the policy is because of a decision that was made by the Links Library Consortium. As you know, last year we moved, the Links Library Consortium moved to a joint operating agreement and as making decisions as an entity as it takes on much more of the management of the Links Consortium, which we are a member of and we benefit from greatly. One of the things that the Links governing board decided was to change how the library was accessing cataloging records. So this is in the weeds, or as Kathy would say, pass the weeds into the mud on this one. But obviously cataloging records and how when we're purchasing materials, we're bringing in those records into our online catalog is a very important piece of how we make materials available to the public. And the Links Library Consortium has decided to move from no longer using OCLC as a vendor for that work to BTCAT. And that was made with finding a different vendor that would be able to provide the same service at a lower cost. As a sort of unintended consequence of that, that means we were also losing access to the interlibrary loan network as part of that. We don't use that as heavily. And so one of the things that when came back with the decision that the Links Consortium had made, we really tasked Kathy and her team with looking at, okay, without this tool, without this network, what changes do we need to make to the services that we provide for the public? And that is where the memo that starts on page 37 came from, really Kathy did the work of digging into what has been our use of interlibrary loan and how have we been approaching it. So this is not books in our consortium. This is not books in the Boise Public Library. But these are materials that someone in the community asks us for that we don't have access to, either because we own it or somebody in the consortium owns it. So on page 38, we looked at how often we're using that service. Most of the time, when someone requests an item that's not in our collection, the library purchases it. They look at that. Is it available? Is it something that meets our collection development policy? Is it something we think would have general appeal to the community? And so most of the time, that service, we just purchase those items. So, for the part we looked at, 57% of that time we're purchasing it. About 16% of the time, it's just an item that doesn't exist in a way that we can purchase it. So someone may ask, I would like this book in big print and I'd like it in Russian. Well, if no publisher ever created that, then there's no way for us to acquire it for anyone. We found, 27% of the time we were using interlibrary loan to find that material. And this is the piece where that number, we are not going to be able to serve in the same way. So what we anticipate will happen is that we'll have a higher percentage of our funding will go to purchase requests, that we will be actually bringing in more materials in the collection. So the change for that will really narrow the scope of what is available for interlibrary loan. Obviously, we've had a policy change in front of you that reflects this, and then also a regulation. We'll need you to approve the policy, but we also wanted you to see how the regulation would change. And the reason that we are still able to provide access to microfilm is how unique that is and how few people have a microfilm reader in their house. That really is a public service. I've got some interesting old library stuff, but I don't have that. So even Kathy has it. But that is such a specialized and really unique library service. And so most of the time when people are requesting microfilm, it's because they know exactly where an item is and they want to bring it to us so they can read it on one of our machines. Kathy, do you have anything to add before I open it up to questions? Interesting here.
I don't know whether this is just your work or a team, but this was excellent. This overview and cost analysis was extremely well done and just sort of reinforces that the management team is constantly looking for cost reduction opportunities. I thought the proposal was going to translate into serving our users better, frankly. And I was really happy when I got finished studying this. So thank you.
It's a high compliment, right? Thank you very much. And it was definitely a team effort. So, yeah, we did a lot of work to try to figure out if there was a way that we could minimize the impact on our community. And from the perspective of sometimes these specific titles, we're hopeful that we'll be able to find titles that maybe aren't those specific titles, but that will still meet the need, right? And so sometimes it's been interesting as podcasts and blogs and all the things have come into being, because somebody will see something in a podcast where we'll talk about picking up this 1987 book on investing at a garage sale, and then we get interlibrary loan requests for that, right? Where we actually have different titles that fill that need. So I do feel like in a way, this is going to allow us to kind of shift the focus a little bit more to that broader community focus, bring in the materials that make sense for a larger group, impacts that wider group. And we will see some occasional times where we can't get specific titles people really want, but I think that's going to be fairly minimal.
Any additional questions? There's no questions. I'll just call attention to page 39 where we did put in the timeline for next steps, particularly communicating with the public on this change. Obviously today is April 9th. We're presenting this policy change to all of you. And then we also have teed up for early May
changing our, the wording on the website that has the request an item page to reflect this change. We're also asked Kathy and her team to put together a proactive outreach to some of our heavy ILL users so that they're aware of it. And then to really, we need to pull out of the system starting in May because as of July 1st, we won't have access to it. And so we want to make sure that all the materials we have either lent out or have borrowed have been returned to their respective permanent shelves. So that is why why this change won't necessarily go into effect. You know, we won't lose full access to the service until the end of June, but we wanted to make sure we were really thoughtful in the implementation of the change.
I'll just note that I asked some questions earlier on this to Jessica. And for those people who are what I call deep research oriented and are looking for materials, there, you know, we do have a relationship with the university libraries where a lot of that material can be obtained either through their relationships with other academic libraries and borrowing privileges and relationships that we have. So it's not even the stuff that, or some portion of the stuff that we have been able to provide we might be able to continue to at least direct them to the folks in the academic libraries. And that's for that kind of very, I call it esoteric academic kind of research that sometimes comes through us that won't be able to be provided in the future by us.
Kathy, do you want to talk about the outreach you did to the ESU on that?
Yeah, so we do have a fairly regular back and forth of our materials going to DSU and their materials coming to us. So much so that our courier stops there every day, actually. But so I reached out to let them know what we were doing and why the change, and they were and indicating that we would just continue to send people for their special borrower card. They were super receptive to that and just mentioned that, you know, that is a service that they do provide to the community and want to be seen as being a viable option for people for that. So, you know, we do have a good relationship that we want to continue to be good neighbors, you know, and I'm hoping that they'll still send people our way to make sure they can get what they need from us. So.
We also thank you for being an early reader of the memo because it was written by a bunch of librarians and Ron is the person who actually made it readable by non-librarians. So it really was a team effort.
If there are no other questions, I do need a motion to approve the proposed revisions to policy 3.04 and regulation 3.04.
And to approve the policy 3.04 as revised.
Second.
Roll call. Lenny,
Yes.
Pantera,
Yes.
Kuzinski,
Yes.
Simmons,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Now, Sarah Kelly Chase will walk us through section 4.05, use of technology.
Why, yes, thank you. So I'm pulling through 4 points, the section of policy for section 4. It's like Jessica mentioned, it's pretty big, so we've been serving that in chunks. So there will be one last piece that you will get in May that actually flows nicely with collection development. The only recommendation we have for this giant chunk is in policy 4.05 in use of technology to change the word patron to user for consistency across all of our policies. Other than that, we don't have any other recommendations. Open for questions.
I move adoption of section 4.05 is revised.
Second.
Roll call.
Plenty.
Yes.
Pantera,
Yes.
Kuzinski,
Yes.
Simmons,
Yes. Thank you so much. You're welcome. Sarah.
I should probably say 4.05 and 4.06.
Moving on to the master facilities plan update with Jessica and Lindsay Erb from Public Works.
We are going to start with a update on the library facility planning work that we've done, and I'm very excited to have the opportunity to have the discussion with all of you about the listening sessions that we all participated in. So the goals for our discussion today are to, thanks, Carrie. We're going to discuss the recent in March, the library facility plan listening sessions. I'm going to share highlights with you from our community engagement team outreach. As you remember, it was very clear that none of us are teens, and so we tasked a specific work group with doing that outreach, and I'm excited to talk to you about what they did and what they heard. We are going to discuss what we believe are some of the draft key findings from our own internal staff debrief, and obviously want to share them with you and then get your input and feedback. We have the notes that you all took as table facilitators, but this is the real first opportunity where you've all had the chance to come back and discuss what you heard. And then obviously we'll share our next steps in creating the facility plan. So we'll try to go through that as quickly as some of the early stuff as quickly as possible to get to your all conversation about what you heard. So we started these facility planning listening sessions with the goals that I shared to kick off all of those sessions. Obviously, we wanted to inform the public about why we were creating a new facility plan, update them on the work that was done so far and what we heard, particularly sharing some of the highlights from the community survey, and then listening to people and what they loved, what they wanted to fix, and what they wanted to add about their library. So I'll talk a little bit about connecting with teens. And so this was the work that community engagement did really out of the library in the community. They targeted a combination of the junior and high school schools in the area, looking at Bishop Kelly, Boise High, Bora, Capitol, Centennial, and Timberline, and then also East Junior High and North Junior High. They were able to attend events, they put up posters. The poster that you see here on the image is one of the posters that was hung up, I believe this was at North Junior High. And so in addition to talking with kids and talking with librarians that support kids, they were also having some of the passive opportunities for people to put their thoughts down. We also have them engage with our teens that come and use the library downtown. And then teen on the street interviews. So going out and having quick little interactions with teens on the Greenbelt, at Road Skate Park, at local coffee shops like Alchemist and Dutch Bros, Starbucks, Java. They attended baseball games, and not surprisingly, some of the most vocal comments, or the people that gave them the most amount of comments and longest comments, were the speech tournament. So I don't know if they were using that to warm up, but they certainly the notes from that were noticeably longer. So here's what the community engagement team has forwarded to us, and obviously they've got more details that they have forwarded along to Group 4. Teens have a positive feeling about Boise Public Library, even if they don't use the library themselves. Most teens talked about using their school libraries more, but sometimes, particularly Boise High, being referred to this library in particular for things that we have, especially since we're so close. The reasons that the teens gave for not going to the library really boil down to how busy our teens are. How much they've got going on with school, with activities, with work. And they talked about not having enough time. And this group in particular, Siobhan talked about how this group, she was listening to some of the teen stuff, but also came to our listening sessions. The teen group talked more about the hours that she thought that she heard in some of the other public listening sessions. that having the hours not convenient, particularly on the weekends. So what could make the library more attractive to teens? That expanded weekend and evening hours came up. A designated teen space with a cozy atmosphere and a place to hang out. So we heard that also in the listening sessions, but that was also raised by teens. And when asked what they want to do in that space, really having sort of place for creativity, crafting, gaming, hanging out, and they were interested also in sort of having a food or coffee options as well. So this is also how we got the word out for the listening sessions that you all attended. This was, I think, a combination of using library assets, but also city assets. Those listening sessions, altogether, we had 69 public attendees. So this doesn't include board, doesn't include our council members, doesn't include staff. These were members of the public who attended. As you can see, this is where we had the ability to either have a discussion with one group of breakout, or we had multiple groups of breakouts. And then we had great representation from all of you. Really appreciate your willingness to be assigned the facilitation role, the note-taking role. I was just so impressed seeing how people really reacted to having a board member and how excited they were to be able to talk to you about the library and what they had to tell you. And so here's our draft key findings that I wanted to share with you, and then we'll obviously have a discussion on sort of what you heard and what you want to share and what you want to make sure group 4 hears. I want to start with what we heard a great appreciation for. Obviously, staff was a big one. That first sticky note exercise about what you love about the library, staff was so heavily represented in that. And I think that just is a real testament to the people that work here at the library every day. We also heard, I think, a lot of support from the Links Library Consortium. That wasn't, actually, some people did literally say the Links Library Consortium, but most people talked about being able to have access to lots of materials, have them, I can have a book brought over from another branch and I can pick it up anywhere, or I've got an opportunity to visit other libraries. People knew a lot about the other library services. I like to go to this location for X. We heard a lot about how people love this play space at Eagle for children, or different programming at Garden City, or different programming at Ada. And I think that is really a testament to how well people are served, not just by Boise Public Library, but by the consortium overall. We think the branch model is very well established, right? When you think about how in the year 2000, when the last facility plan was done and there weren't a branch models, it was really interesting to hear people talk about, well, I like this library because it's in my neighborhood and I know the people who work at the library, and they're, they've done a partnership with a local school. That I think was really reflected in how people talked about those branches and the differences between them as well. And then one of the things that we were really curious about is, would people be supportive of further specialization? That teen space in particular as a potential option. There was a great discussion about a potential maker space, but people really thought, oh, that would make sense depending on a community to have different specializations and locations. There was strong agreement that the library needs additional space to meet community needs. I thought what was interesting, we had heard in the survey wanting to have additional space, particularly for meetings. The medium-sized meeting room was something that came up that I had sort of a refinement on that survey when we were digging in on, okay, what kind of meeting space? Not the big ones, not the study ones, but those, trying to have 8 to 10 people. That meeting space really was something that was of interest. And then the real recognition of wanting to have spaces for quiet and loud activities. I think the most vocal example of that was the challenge that we had at Hollister, where that meeting was interrupted multiple times by wonderful children's voices coming back and forth. That was just an example of how some of those particular branch libraries that are one room have some real challenges in terms of noise level, depending on the time of day and the location. And then really what we heard from attendees where they want us to invest the Hollister branch, Hillcrest, and then West Boise as well. We had a real big turnout from the group in West Boise that is interested in how they can be served. So my next question is about the discussion, and sort of now that you've sort of heard the takeaways that we had as staff, would love to hear what you had as when you were in those individual sessions, and particularly I'll go back to the takeaways. If there's anything you think we missed, anything you want to add, any further refinement you want to make, and anything else we should really make sure as we hand these listening sessions off to group 4, it represents fully what was discussed.
I'll jump in and just say that as it relates to the West Boise groups, because they were in various different places that I was, at the various locations that I was there. And I tried to kind of probe a little more about the notion of a standalone library like Crossing versus one in an existing space a la Hillcrest and I think there was a widespread feeling that while obviously everyone would love a standalone library, the notion of having something sooner was the bigger desire. So whether it's in an existing strip mall a la what we have at Hillcrest, they would rather have that than wait 10 more years to end up with something that's a standalone library. And in fact, there was a lot of discussion about what kind of possibilities exist in, kind of hybrid of maybe a meeting space and then lockers that people can collect books that are put on reserve, as it were. Just something that can get stuff moving quickly, maybe in the next year or two, versus, oh, wait, anything we do is going to be 5 years out. I think there was a real pent up desire for some action to happen quickly. So I'll just say that seems to be the sense I had, and try to look outside the box. And I would say the final thing related to that is that it seems that a lot of the development is going on, and there seems to be a lot of development going on in West Boise, and there isn't a lot of vacant land happening there. And so there's a real tension about every month that we wait and not do anything means there's another space that potentially could have been used again for a branch library that disappears because it's been turned into housing development or turned into, the developer has done retail there and the city hasn't had an opportunity to move on. That seemed to be the sense that I heard from folks.
I agree with these findings. I think it really recaps everything I heard really well. I just wanted a clarification. So from here, I guess I'm trying to even articulate this. As far as where to invest and kind of when to invest, to make a decision from my perspective, I really need to understand kind of like the costs for the different options. And then I'm also curious a little bit about like population density aspects, because I know at Hollister, that's the real strain, is that there's like a a growing population within that area, and that library is heavily used. And then there's the whole piece for renting and the state of the facility and how much control we do or don't have. So like, to me, I need to understand like costs, timing a little bit, but then also I'm curious about population density. And then I'm curious about access to our, like the Ada County Library and Meridian libraries and how, or if that plays in too. So I guess I agree with the findings, but I want to make sure we get that information as part of their next piece. Makes sense. And I assume we will. I just kind of wanted to.
I agree with you, Nikki. It was balance was the word I was using, and system, like, right, as a board member, as each of the libraries, you could hear people were emotional and in a really great way. Councilmember Wills mentioned it last night during a city council session, but it was lovely to go and hear people wanting more in a very vocal way at each of the sessions and in very different ways. And some things that were really touching to me too, as I sat with my own neighbors in West Boise wanting more services there, but also in the Collister and Hillcrest branches, some real emotional conversations with people about the perceptions they have about how the city invests or doesn't in their neighborhood, because they are in these rental units that are much smaller, that have frequent facility needs and limitations to, personally, I went to drop my kid off at Nerf last week and I was like, I'm gonna go down to the library. And my daughter was like, there's a library here? And I'm like, yeah, you can't see it, but it's 2 doors down. And that's where I'm going while you're at Nerf. So I think holding that balance of, I think all of Boise wants more library, right? And I think to Ron's point too, we heard some really cool, innovative ideas out of folks about not just I want a library, but what are the uses? And I think that's where we need to focus in too, is what are the use cases that each group was making at the different libraries to say, we want expanded hours. I would love 24-hour availability to pick up and drop off my books. I would love a little bit of conference and meeting space, but don't necessarily need the whole shebang. So I think looking at that balance of the system, and then where are those innovative ideas of how we can increase the utilization and the kinds of specialty utilization that people are wanting in some of these different neighborhoods. And then also understanding that the choices we make are impacting people's feelings about the reflections we're making about their neighborhood and the demographics of the people we're serving, which was something that was a kind of a key
That was
takeaway for me. I hadn't heard people say that before. Yeah. And coffee. Coffee shops out there. Nice. Come on.
Anything else to add?
I was just going to add appreciation too to our city council members who also attended some of those sessions with us. It was lovely not just to have us there, but to have you all there as well. And I think the folks were appreciative of seeing you all and your support. Thank you for attending.
Thank you. I really appreciate the comments, particularly about the emotional attachment. I do think that was a learning for me as well. And I am regretting my choice of the table. I'm not regretting this slide, but I'm regretting the next slide, Nikki. You'll find out why. I'm sorry. So here's where we are. We are getting close to being able to have this facility master plan drafted. Group 4 is doing all the work. They'll be taking this input, and we are expecting a draft from them next month. I took their literally 2-page table of contents, which did include the information, Nikki, that you talked about in terms of costs, density, forecasting growth, access to other libraries. And I just put it under context, usage, and trends. But they have provided us sort of, this is what they think that final report table of contents will look like. Library services for Boise, the things that you were talking about will be first in context, but then also in some of the recommendations. And then they'll have, so executive summary, intro methodology, their library services for voices who are current, where they think stuff is going. They'll have our local trends and some of the national trends that we're looking that will affect us as well. Then that library facilities, they're breaking it up into sort of how we are as a system in terms of facilities, and then individual location assessments. So how are we overall, but then also, okay, let's talk about when you stick and what what investments you'll need to make in it over the next 10 years to keep that building up.
Is that only our current individual locations, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Okay.
Because then the recommendations is sort of the, okay, in the next year, what do they recommend will be our priorities for 10 years? And some of those longer term priorities, when should you start thinking about your 30-year roof? Some of the things that they're looking at fall outside of that 10 years, so they'll make sure they put markers on it. And then some of that implementation. And then one of the things that I think was interesting, particularly if you're talking about the, in places where we are trying to be strategic, but also opportunistic, if something comes up, they're going to help us with some of the, okay, what would you want to see in place to be able to jump on an opportunity? So some of that, if you're looking for an investment, make sure it's got these 3 or 5 things, and then that'll help you with decision making as we want to be flexible, because things obviously change over time.
So as a board member, I'm having a difficult time trying to understand our roles, and then and then we, I presume, make a recommendation to the city council and the mayor in terms of this is our long-term plan, this is et cetera. How does that dovetail into this budget development that's going on right now? Is anything going to happen, or are we out of sync to make it work for the next fiscal year's budget? You're smiling, so I won't. But council will speak to that, or you somehow understanding how the timing works out.
Yeah, so we do. So at the basic level, to answer that question, the board does make recommendations and council funds.
Right.
And the council is looking at balancing all the different city departments and strategies and needs. So they do need to have sort of a long-term plan that has, here's what we need to do and how we want to go with this, the recommendations from the board. And then they'll need to do the work of, okay, you heard from Eric, what flexibility do we have? How do we build these into our budget, particularly those capital pieces? And to Nikki's point, why it's so important and why and this is work we know we'll get from before, is any new capital investment, absolutely we have to know what the ongoing costs are. So we've got to have a real understanding of what is the cost per square footage on something that we lease, something that we own, in terms of providing services. Because also from Eric's presentation, it is staff that make a library, and it's staff that are the most ongoing costs. So I think really it behooves us to have as solid a plan in place that talks about all the components and then allows both council and city to have some of those real discussions about impact with a real understanding of costs going forward. I answered I know you were looking at Council President Nash, and I answered, so how'd I do?
Can you go back a slide? I want to better understand the timeline. Could you help me understand when the report from the contractor will come back? Because I see city council presentation in September, but it sounds like there might be a draft sooner.
We are hoping for an internal draft for that really, Lindsay and I are going to block time on our calendars to make sure from a facility side, does it meet her needs, and from a strategy side, does it meet mine? So we don't anticipate that bringing that to either board or council. And so we've got what we think is probably the final version, or as close to a final version as we can. And we are hoping that we'll be able to do that too. But this was built knowing how challenging it is to have council in that July timeframe when you guys have a lot on your agenda with budget and some of the holidays. So we put it sort of at the end of where we think it will be.
The only thing I'd flag is, despite it being a central authority of city council and a pretty big deal, the only people that we've had come out to our budget meetings the last 2 cycles have been folks that want a library across Boise. So I would just be reluctant. Our feedback in the last 2 cycles is wait. We're paying for a plan. I would be reluctant to have them wait 3 budget cycles to have that document. So that would be my only.
Okay, that's cool.
Any additional questions or comments about the master facilities plan update? Okay. We're gonna switch gears and talk about a significant capital project update, still with Jessica and Lindsay.
And this is an update that I was able to give to council last night. I don't know how many of you got a chance to tune in, but we'll do the same presentation with you. This is really the work that is the culmination of some of the investments that started in 2020 at this location in particular. So I had wanted to update council, the board, the public on some of the work that is coming to this location, in particular our first floor. This will be really the reason we want to talk about this publicly. While this work won't start until September, it will be the most disruptive to our current services. But also at the end of the day, the most impactful in terms of what we're able to provide for the community. It is business as usual right now through our summer reading of this year. It's just upstairs. There are thousands of books ready to go out to readers. Super exciting. But really wanted to give people time to know what's coming up and what we want to share with them. So we'll share the timeline, next steps, and obviously start to identify questions that we may need to address. I was before council yesterday and loved talking about the mission of the Boise Public Library and providing access. And you'll love this because I was able to tie this work directly to our strategic pillar of expanding access and creating library spaces that are accessible and welcoming to all. And highlighted the downtown library as our busiest location. About 900 people visiting each day. We are seeing a dip because of how hard it is sometimes to actually figure out which road will connect you to the library, but not as big as we thought it might dip. And I think that is in recognition of, the collection that's here, the programming that's here, the space that's here. Last year, almost half the people who visited a Boise Public Library in person came downtown. So any change to this location will really be a system-wide impact. We anticipate people will get to explore other locations. We're thinking about some interesting ways to help them find more little gems across Boise Public Library. So as I mentioned, this really is the culmination of some work that was started in 2020 when the new main library project was halted. The city did a facilities conditional assessment of this building. The community wants us to be in this building. What do we need to do to make sure that this space is safe and welcoming for staff and the public? And they put together a list of capital projects. Those of you who have been on the board for multiple years have seen these come through. In 2022, the roof replacement, the book sorter, improved our efficiency and kept us dry. '23 is when we started in the 4-story tower, those upgrades to making sure that all our restrooms met the requirements in the American Disabilities Act. And last year, I think as we did a tour as well, you saw some of the improvements we were making in some of our staff workspaces in anticipation of really the final piece of making sure that all of the building has systems that are up and running. Some of the investments that we've made and some of the investment goals, I think you've seen this before, wanting to have safe, accessible spaces, maximum use and flexibility. This term I learned from Lindsay, the idea of value engineering. We are taking a project that's really focused on making sure we've got adequate wires, plumbing, and HVAC to use as an opportunity to make the library more impactful and a place where people are better served. So while she is focused really on those pieces on this other slide, the abatement, the new plumbing, the cabling, that fancy new roof, and the shiny fire pump, we get to really focus in partnership on how are we making sure that this library has impact. And as we go forward on the first floor, these investments that are coming up, we're really focused on two things. Creating a welcoming space for everyone. This is where you will see us remove the current circulation desk and install a new accessible circulation desk. We'll flip the location so that when you walk into the downtown library, the first face you will see is a Boise public staff member who's going to welcome you and ask if they can help. We'll install accessible restrooms in our youth services area, which I think is one of the most important places to have them. And we're going to prioritize the children who grow up in this library, making sure that we are expanding the space and the usage for our programs and services, and improving our ability to meet the demands of our youth printed material usage. You know, I'm passionate about early childhood reading levels and age level reading levels, and so making sure that the group that needs the most print materials has that adequate space for it. So to cut to the chase before I start showing you some of the beautiful images of what this will look like, as I said, this construction will start in September. We will need to close the entire first floor to the public for 9 to 12 months for that construction. As you know, because we're sitting on the 3rd floor, we do have 2 other floors, so we'll be able to continue to serve the public. And because we are replacing all the systems that run through the heart of the library, everything comes in from the north side of the loading dock, and for us to have those final restroom upgrades, we need to bring everything through the middle of the 1st floor. This means the entire 1st floor will be a construction zone, and there's no way to have safe services for the public in a construction zone. So this is really the safest, fastest, most cost-effective way to do the renovations that we will need. I'm going to show you some of the beautiful images that have been put together to see what this could look like, to highlight a couple things. So this is a view if you have just come in the main library doors and you are starting to turn a little bit towards the river and towards youth services. So as you can see, we are moving the information desk up against the windows. We're taking out the 2 offices that are currently there. We are building a space where people will be able to come in and see staff. We're adding a lot of windows and light throughout the building. So it's sort of just to the left where there are some windows inside the building. Those will be added to the Hayes Auditorium. There'll also be windows on the west side of the building that will add those as well to open up and add light into the Hayes Auditorium. You can see on the very edge of this image, that's the window that shows the sorter. So when we put that in, we put in that window with the idea of we'd be able to allow people up close look as those books are moved. And then also behind the information desk, point out that there is now going to be another exit for staff. And that is a safety feature that we're really pleased that we're able to put into this design as well. Couple things to note, would be remiss in saying, this is a view towards youth services. Obviously, youth services will look like youth services. This was just an artist's rendering, so you can get a feel for the architecture. Here's another view, same thing. We've just entered the main door. This time we're turning north towards the foothills. The current railing on the staircase to the second floor has some real safety and accessibility concerns. This solves those issues. We're also going to be able to reduce the footprint of the columns and really bring it back more towards that warehouse feel. We still need the columns to hold up the buildings, but they will be, having them go back to being narrow, we'll get more light and more openness in the building. And then as again, that aesthetic feel of our origins as a hardware store. And then the last image, this is coming in off the loading dock and looking down the hallway. Again, you can see the real opening up and the light. We are also looking at adding a lot more seating around the edge. We are located right in a beautiful part. We've got greenery outside our windows. We'll be able to have actually watching, well, I think some days we'll be able to actually have the sunset come into the building. So we're taking advantage and making sure that we've got lots of furniture and seating in those locations that can take advantage of the beauty of our neighborhood. So here's where we are today. The electrical bids for this work are open. Lindsay's just getting ready to make sure that the full plan goes through design review. And that'll become public, which is why we're bringing it so that you know what is happening on this. That we anticipate the full bids will be open in May. We'll get, as I said, we will get through summer reading, and then we will spend August when kids are back in school with some of that construction prep. And in September, we will close the first floor as construction starts, and it will be closed for 9 to 12 months. When we thought about priorities for services, we went back actually to policy and what we have outlined and what we're thinking about our priorities. Obviously, keeping the building open for those who need it. We will be doing a lot of work and moving things around in preparation for that because we want to make sure we're providing access to library materials. Youth collection, we're looking at every inch of the building. We're thinking about where could admin move, where can different parts of staffing move temporarily. It's really a great example of how creative staff are and how much our partners are helping us with this. Helping people access computers and the internet. Obviously, we still continue to do that. We have Wi-Fi, we'll continue. And then we'll continue with programming as our capability and location allows. So the next question that I anticipate is how will people get to the second and third floor? Because I think most people just walk past this entrance and don't realize that we actually do have an easy way for people who come in the building instead of going through the vestibule, the double doors. We'll have people directed to this door that leads directly to an alcove that has an elevator and then a staircase. Right now, it's really primarily used as the entrance for the learning lab, which is up on the 4th floor, and we've had discussions with them about keying the elevator so that it will stop at multiple floors. We talked to CE about having some images about what's going on behind the plywood so that people know why we're making the investments and also just directing them so that they can continue to use the library. Communication with the public is something that we're thinking about as well, helping people know how to use the library throughout the project. We have a good routine for some of our previous renovations, but we will add a couple additional elements to it. We obviously do construction updates in our library newsletter. We'll add city newsletters as well, library and city social. We have a construction page on our library website, and the city will help us elevate that on the city website as well. And we'll have signage at all locations. And then we're starting to do some specific plans for key partners. I mentioned that's an example of a partner that shares this space with us. We'll want to make sure we bring into the plan as well. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention at some point in 2026, we will probably need to come back to the board with some planned closures, particularly when we are doing some of the electrical work and moving from one electrical switchgear to, yeah, look at that. But that will be something that we will do next year when the construction is underway. Love to open it up for questions for me or for Lindsay.
Construction begins in September. And will end.
Our best guess is 9 to 12 months.
I mean, I have feelings. I'm really not happy that we have to lose that like special youth area for that long, but I acknowledge there's probably not many other options, and I trust that you all have looked at that carefully. You addressed, so will the current youth services stuff be just on a different floor or dispersed through the branches, or maybe you haven't gotten that far?
Our real intent is to have it in the building in some capacity. Because we also, knowing how busy our youth services, I was just down this morning, we had a music and movement with Idaho, the ballet group, and there was a ballerina doing Swan Lake. And it is
Such a like vibrant area that it's like pains me to think about losing that. I mean, I assume some people will sort of go to the different branches just to avoid the kind of inconvenience, but just thought, I don't know.
Well,
I don't know that there's
yeah,
anything to be done about it.
we'll get to, I think one of the things that we're really looking at also is sort of something that we piloted a lot in COVID is just what are the programs that we can do in Julia Davis Park? We have such a good relationship with parks and have really, we do year-round, if we can, year-round outdoor programming out of this building with that group. I think we'll try to do more of that if possible. But yes, we agonized over this, trying to think about how can we do this as disruptive as possible. And we have now moved into the, we're gonna have to do this as creatively as possible.
Well, it looks amazing, and I think it'll be a great result.
Having watched the budgeting process for 3 years, I've formed the impression that every entity in the city has a list of facilities improvements, capital improvements, and I'm gonna call them the wish list items. And they all add up to more than the city is really going to spend. That there's someone in the facilities group that's doing sort of triaging and decides what's gonna work on first. And to some extent, their activities reflect budget tightening, budget loosening. So it's a long way of saying, I don't feel like the funds for library projects are really uncertain. And even though we've got this plan made for 9 to 12 months of construction, it could well go longer than that based on the sort of perturbations to what I just described. And it worries me that we could be in a situation longer just due to the way things evolve in the city's budgeting.
Well, I'll start and then hand it over to Lindsay. We know construction projects are always full of surprises based on the previous construction projects we've done in this building, which I do think does sometimes extend a time frame, things outside of our control. I think Public Works does a very good job in their contracting, their bidding and their contracting, to make sure that any of those contracts are, up to an amount and the work, and they will lock that down on the expense side. And this is money that has been in our capital budget planned for these fiscal years since 2020. So I agree that there are always unexpected adventures in how a construction project actually happens when you start to pull things off the wall. But I've got real confidence, and we have a very strong track record with the budgeting that has been done for the previous projects. So the restrooms, the roof, the stair, the railing and the staircases. If it goes out to bid and we've got a vendor that agrees to that contract, Lindsay's able to get that through and at budget. And as you've got a really good track record also of when possible at the time frame that the contractors agreed to.
Yeah, I'll just add, we've been working with CM Company as a CMGC, that's a construction manager, general contractor. And so when we put these projects out to bid,
They're giving us a guaranteed maximum price, changing with the costs. And yes, all the funds that are for this project have already been budgeted, they're ready to go. We have seen savings throughout the projects we've already done, so we've been squirreling that away for this project, and just being really mindful with all of the design and the building system upgrades, just to be as conservative as possible. And the shutting the whole first floor down to do it in one phase is really an economical choice, so that we can just get in, get done as soon as possible with not putting too much strain on the staff, moving things around, that type of thing. So that's one of the main benefits of the one phase of the first floor. So yes, we will definitely be discovering things, but the first floor, one-story building for this facility is pretty standalone and isolated, which is nice, but it does have to connect all the way through, as Jessica alluded. So see what we find. But our contractor has been fabulous to work with, and we'll be on site every day, and we'll have subs that can be on the project the entire time, as opposed to when we've had to phase. We've had to have subs mob off, mob on, which adds costs and just not a consistent workforce for us. So that's why we're moving forward with one phase.
So I have two observations. One is just, I'm sure as things get further along, we'll get more details. And I'm not gonna ask for lots of details now. But it seems to me, I guess, like one observation is, to the extent that it is possible on the second and or third floors, to carve out a space that is designed for the kids, and not to try to just like have it molded around everything else. And then I'm not sure I understand physically how you can get all of the books and materials that are on the first floor moved to the second and or third floor. And what the heck do you do with the book sorter, which is, are you gonna try to keep it where it is and then take the books from that space outside, the elevator? It's just sort of curious in terms of, or are you gonna say, we're just not gonna use the book sorter, we're gonna go back to manual before, kind of close off that space.
Stay tuned. We've been putting carts in that elevator. We've been measuring square footage. We think there'll be some, obviously prioritizing the children's collection, moving it up as a group. We think there'll be some materials that may need to be in a different location for a little bit. The best example I can give you right now is at this downtown location, we have all the book club kits. They're up on the fourth floor. You don't go up and grab a book club kit, you put it on hold and we send it to wherever you are gonna pick it up. We think we can move that to Collister and they can serve out of there. So we are really at that beginning of trying to figure out where does stuff go and how do we make it as accessible as possible. At some point, we are gonna hit a point of, okay, well, some things may be not browsable, But we'll make those collection decisions based on prioritizing the collections that we know need to be browsable. Yeah, stay tuned. You guys will hear a lot more about this as we get closer.
Okay. Thank you for that update. Appreciate that. So we will move on. The selection of trustee to review payment vouchers this month is me. I'm good. Our next meeting date will be Wednesday, May 14th. I believe, Ron, you're gonna be out of town for that one. So Ron won't be available. Any other known conflicts? Keep chatting of that. With that, we do need to move into executive session.
I move that under provisions of Idaho State Code 74-2041B, this board recess to an executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters, and that a roll call be taken on this motion.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Honey,
Yes.
Pantera. Yes. Kuzinski,
Yes.
Lemon. Yes. All in favor, motion carried.
We will go.
We will go in. We'll go back. Facilities. Okay.
Yeah, usually with this number.
Okay, thank you. The board has concluded the discussion of personnel matters in the executive session. I will now accept a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone.